everyone. We're going to talk really quickly about the FBA and the PBSP, your last assignment. You're going to be given a case study of a student with an emotional impairment and a template for an FBA and a BIP or a PBSP. So it's going to be the same case study that you guys had used in the previous assignment. You're going to assess the behavior and develop a plan to reduce the inappropriate behavior and increase the appropriate behavior. So this is going to be two separate assignments that are going to be submitted. They're going to be 50 points each. And the assignment will assess your ability to apply your knowledge of the student, knowledge of the reward pathways, knowledge of relevant research, and knowledge of intervention strategies. So for the FBA, you're going to complete the FBA form. And below are going to be areas of the FBA that are going to be targeted on the rubric. Behavior of concern, you're going to choose one behavior for the FBA and the BIP. You're going to operationally define it. You're going to provide any additional information that will help someone unfamiliar with your student be able to recognize the behavior when it occurs. Triggers and antecedents, you're going to answer the 6 questions that are within that section. Within those 6 questions, you have to include data that was collected. You need to include at least one indirect data collection method and one direct collection method. You're going to either create these yourselves or you can use data that you've been able to research. I've included some sample items for you. You don't necessarily have to fill these out per se, but you do have to reference them in terms of your data. So direct methods, you can do an ABC chart. Here's an example. You don't have to use this one. And here's a behavior tally sheet. So you could do interval, you could do time sampling, however you want to do it. And again, this is just an example, so these aren't necessarily behaviors that you have to include. The indirect method, you have a questionnaire for a rating scale. And then here's some examples of a rating scale. So this example targets the same behavior, a tantrum, but it talks about range, percentage, duration, intensity. So you don't have to do all of those, you just have to choose one if this is the type of indirect method you're going to choose. You are going to have the consequence, so you're going to state the consequence of the target behavior. Remember, a consequence isn't necessarily negative, it's just what happens after. So it can have both a positive consequence, such as pure attention, and a negative one, such as suspension. And then you're going to have the summary hypothesis. The hypothesis for your behavior should include the antecedent, the target behavior, the consequence, and the function. So here's a quick look at the FBA and what you're going to fill out. So student name, date of birth, plan date, the UIC number you don't have to worry about, grade, primary disability, attending school, completed by, your sources of data, you're going to click here. The behavior of concern. So what does the behavior look like? You're going to operationally define it, which means it's going to be objective, measurable. Targeted behavior, so what behavior are you targeting? Again, they ask for the behavior. It's a little redundant here. The frequency and the times, is it per hour, per day? Your trigger or your antecedent. And then you're going to answer these 6 questions, like I said. The consequence. What happens immediately after? Again, like I said, it's a little redundant, but this is the official Macomb County form. And then here you're going to click yes or no for the function, any current plans or strategies that you use. So this is prior to the FBA and prior to the BIP. Is there anything that you're using? Describe them, student input, what's their perception, family input, what's their perception, staff input. So obviously this is stuff that you're going to have to make appropriate. And then your hypothesis statement. So this is going to be worth 50 points. And then you're also going to have the positive behavior support. So again, there's some targeted areas. Description of the student. You're going to summarize the status of the student and the behavior, providing as much detail as you can. Here you should also summarize the direct and indirect data collection methods. If you have chosen to use the same student that you used for your wraparound plan, you can use the same summary and then just add information as needed. No point in redoing the work twice. The behavior, again, you're going to choose only one behavior, the same one that's identified in the FBA. The summary should include the antecedent, the consequence, and the function. Preventative strategies. So what strategies are in place to prevent this behavior? Or what strategies are you going to adopt to prevent this behavior? The teaching skills, so the specific explicit instruction to teach the replacement behavior, and then the reinforcement system. So what is the reinforcement? How is it going to be reinforced? When? And then the actual schedule of reinforcement. So when and schedule of reinforcement are a little bit different. Schedule of reinforcement is talking about, does it get reinforced after every correct replacement behavior, after 5 correct replacement behaviors? And when is talking about, is that going to be immediate? Is the reinforcement going to be at the end of class? There is a rubric for both of them. And then let's take a quick peek at the PBS plan. So name, date of birth, plan date, grade, primary disability. Again, just disregard UIC, a list of the team members, your description of the student, operational description of the behavior and goals. So here's where you're going to operationally define the behavior. There's 2 spots here. I couldn't get rid of it. You're only going to do 1 because this is only going to target 1 behavior. Your preventative strategies. So what strategies are you going to put in place to prevent the behavior from happening? What's the teaching skills? So those are going to be the specific steps of explicit instruction. Your reinforcement system, your intervention system. So what is going to happen if these aren't working? Your safety and emergency procedures. If a student is harm to or danger to himself or herself or others, what are your safety and emergency procedures going to be? How are you going to evaluate and monitor your plan? And when are you going to review it? As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me.